This is Bill Brady, One United Body, doing another recording for our leadership training. Today I'm going to be speaking on the relationship between sowing and gathering. So the basics of it is that we sow a seed into people. They receive it within themselves, those who believe it. And then we gather them into something. We sow, then we gather. Now, sowing. I see four kinds of sowing. This is what I see currently. We may see more kinds of sowing as we dialogue about this, but I see four kinds of sowing. The first kind of sowing, let me back up, four kinds of gospels that we sow. I see four kinds of gospels that we sow. The first is that each age, there is a gospel associated with that age. So there's the kingdom age and there's a gospel of the kingdom. There is the ecclesia age and there is a gospel of the ecclesia. Ecclesia is Greek pronunciation. Ecclesia is English pronunciation. You'll hear me using ecclesia mostly, but sometimes I use ecclesia. So there's a gospel of the kingdom, a gospel of the ecclesia. Then there's a gospel of Melchizedek for the age of Melchizedek. And then there's a gospel of peace for the age of peace. Each gospel is associated with the actual name of the age. So we sow the gospel of each of these ages, and there are higher ages, we won't go into them at the moment. We sow the gospel of each of these ages, one after the other, into someone when they're ready for them. And then once we have sown it, this particular gospel into them, we gather them into a group that is going to be taught about that particular age. So there's a gathering into the kingdom, and then there's a gathering into the ecclesia. There's a gathering into peace. Melchizedek, gathering into peace. There is also a gospel of each realm and each heavenly city. You go to the OUB website, you'll find a page about realms and heavenly cities. There are many realms and two groups of heavenly cities. One group is 7 heavenly cities that are over realms. And another group is 12 heavenly cities that are the parts of the DNA of the Godhead. For the Spirit, there's righteousness, peace, and joy. For the Son, there is the way, the truth, and the life. For the Father, for God the Father, there is judgment, justice, and holiness. And then for man, there is spirit, soul, and body. And there's a city for each of these 12 strands of DNA associated with the Godhead and with man. So we sow the seed of the revelation about a particular realm that people can learn to function in. We gather them into that realm, and we train them by teaching about how to function in that realm. We sow the seed of a particular heavenly city into people or into a group of people. And when they receive it, we gather them into that heavenly city. So they enter New Jerusalem because they've had the seed of the revelation about New Jerusalem sown into them. They enter into New Jerusalem, and we also can bring them into a group of people that are going to be taught about New Jerusalem. Now, not just teaching, it can also be encounter of that particular realm or that particular city. Then there's a fourth kind of gospel that I see, and again, there may be more than these four. The fourth kind of gospel that I see is a personal gospel. So I'm using the example of Paul. He speaks about my gospel, he calls it. And what he's talking about is the gospel that was given to him as a stewardship with respect to the truth that the Gentiles are equal partners, equal parts of the kingdom and of the ecclesia with the Jews. This was a gospel, a good news given to Paul to proclaim and teach and to gather people into. Proclaim, gather people into, and then teach in that order. Jane and I each have had gospels given to us. I have a gospel given to me. One of my gospels is the gospel of headship. So, for example, with respect to headship, I proclaim headship to people, and then people who receive that proclamation of the revelation about headship and are called to headship, I gather them into headship. And those who are not yet called to headship or aren't called to headship, I'm not quite sure whether everybody's called to headship or not, whether it's a matter of whether people respond to it and grow into it, or whether it's a matter of calling or both or what, a dual truth. It's not going to be a dual truth. But anyway, there's a gathering into that truth. One of the things you do is if you're functioning in headship, you gather people into the body or house that you are in headship over. So they're going to become part of the body or part of the house, and you're the head over that body or the head over that house. So there's that aspect of gathering into, but then there's the higher level headship gathering, which is gathering people into functioning in headship, not being the body or the house, but being the head over the body or the head over the house. So this gives you a general idea of how this works. You first sow the revelation of a particular gospel, then you gather people into it, possibly at different levels, and then you go on to teach them about how to function in what you've gathered them into. Now, of course, with initial salvation, the gospel of salvation is what I call it, is proclaimed, sown into people, and then you gather people into that revelation. And this is an individual thing, but then you go on at another point to gather them into the ecclesia, so they become a part of the ecclesia. Now they are a member or a part, member, hand, eye, ear, whatever, part or member of the ecclesia, and begin functioning within the ecclesia as a part or member, both local ecclesias and universal ecclesia and so on. So yes, we're more familiar with the initial sowing of the gospel of salvation and the initial gathering of people into the kingdom and into the ecclesia than we are with sowing the gospel of a realm or a city and then gathering people into that realm or that city to function there. But these are all aspects of the dynamic of first sowing, then gathering, then teaching, training people into function in the identity that you've gathered them into. So you've gathered them into the corporate identity of ecclesia, and now you teach them how to function as part of the ecclesia. So this is the basics of the dynamic between first sowing, then gathering, then teaching or training.